Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Sid. Good to see you.
So, 8 a.m. in Colorado, I'm guessing you've already been out on the ranch and had a few cups of coffee by now.
Yeah, I've been up since 4:30 or so it's typical morning.
So, you've said before earlier during our intro chat, you're not in the meat business. You're in the soil business. That's a big shift. Can you unpack, Kevin, that mindset a little before we dive in?
Yeah, I would say I'm in the business of making the world a better place is really the way I like to look at it. Both from the meat, from the soil, from the animal, and from human health. And that's really the way I look at all four. We utilize meat and cattle to help regenerate the planet and fix the soil. There's a large misconception that cattle are one of the main sources of greenhouse gases and one of the sources of negative climate change. And when you look at doing cattle the right way, grass-fed, open nature, never confined, we've actually, with our partners, been able to prove that it helps sequester carbon, brings organic matter back into the soil, and in some instances, it's actually carbon negative. So we're making the soil a better place by having the animals roam free, graze naturally, the animals healthier, they're happier, and then that translates into the quality of the meat. So there's a much higher density of nutrients, better for you. And so, we're utilizing animals to create the business of impacting the earth and impacting health. And that's really what the focus has been.
Great. Can't wait to explore that. Let's dive in. The following is a conversation with Kevin Pallaoro, CEO of Teton Waters Ranch, a pioneer in regenerative ranching and ethical meat systems. Kevin is part of a growing movement of food leaders challenging not just what we eat, but how it grows, raised, and sold to us. In a world flooded with greenwashed labels and engineered shortcuts, he's pushing for something deeper. Transparency, soil health, and food that actually sustains us, physically and ethically. This is Pre-Zero Sports Talk Podcast, and I'm your host, Sid Mansala. Today, we examine the future of food, the truth about climate change, performance nutrition, and why the conservation around meat need a major overhaul, believe it or not. This episode is about asking tougher questions and refusing to accept easy answers. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sid.
What was like growing up, Kevin, on a cattle ranch in Colorado?
It was tiring. That's the simplest way to put it. We, growing up on a cattle ranch, we grew up not on a massive scale, but it was about 600-acre ranch, and we had call it about 150 head. And the main thing I always remember is, everybody, when I was in school, everybody was so excited for the summer. They're like, oh, we're going on vacation. We're doing holiday. We're doing this. They're like, what are you doing? You're like, I'm working. I'm going to spend the summer on a tractor, growing hay, baling hay, getting ready and storing up feed for the winters and the cold winters. And when it was winter time, we were up early feeding the cattle and those kinds of things. And one of my funniest memories was I was in probably like 8th grade, and I always got up at call it 5 a.m. to go, feed the animals, get everything ready. And I remember sitting in class, and that was about the time as a young man that you started being interested in girls. And sitting there, there was a cute girl, I can't even remember her name. And we're sitting there, and she's like, what smells like crap? And I looked down at my boots, and I was like, I'm going to have to start getting up even earlier so I can shower and smell respectable by the time I go to school.
And clean up and polish the boots.
But it was great. I wouldn't trade it in for a thing in the world because it just taught me so much around hard work, ethics, doing the right thing, and really being connected to animals and connected to how we eat and our planet.
Yeah, yeah. And when did you first begin questioning the industrial meat system you were raised in?
It wasn't until much later in life, to be honest. So, I grew up, and what we were was like a cow-calf operations. So really, growing up, I thought that the way that we raised cattle, which is the way that almost all cattle are raised up to a certain point in life, was you're doing the right thing. Like, they're out in the pastures grazing. I mean, people care about the animals. Like, the farmers care so much about the animals. So, like, a lot of people say, like, oh, if you're raising these animals to go to processing, like, you don't care. It's like, no, like, there were so many sleepless nights, during calving season, where my mom would just sleep in a truck in 20-degree weather because she was worried about the babies and those kinds of things. And so, when you're in the cow-calf operations, they're always out eating grass. They're always out in open pasture. You only bring them in during extreme colds, or to if they need help with birthing, or they need their supplements and those kinds of things that you do once a year. But that system, I think, is a good system. It's long after it comes after that. Once it goes to further down the chain, that the animals go to the feedlots. And the American system really is all about gaining weight as fast as possible, creating efficiency, and creating that really nice white marbling fat, nice heavy animal. And to do that, like, you need to restrict the animal's movement. You don't want them exercising or roaming freely, and you want to feed them the most dense diet as possible to really fatten them up. And growing up, I never realized, what that meant. Once somebody would come in and buy the calves for the season, like, okay, like, they're going off to greener pastures is what you kind of thought. You didn't really realize what happens further down the chain. So for me, that connection really came many years later. I've been in food literally my entire life, from a walking child on a cattle ranch to where I am today. But I worked in food ingredients for a number of years, and saw how much, like, the science in making efficiency and making products really hit sensory and those kinds of things. And this is kind of interesting. Like, shouldn't food naturally be good? And my job right after that is I was with one of the largest organic farm companies in the US, called Earthbound Farm. So they sold organic lettuce, baby lettuce, organic vegetables, some organic fruit. And when I was there, like, the light bulb went off. It was like, look how much different this is, and how much better this is. And they, even though, like, organic gets a lot of taunt, but, like, they were really good about crop rotations and trying to regenerate the soil and those kinds of things. And I started to see a different way of, like, oh, it's not so much just about the efficiency. It's not about this. It's really about creating better health, and better health not just for you, but for the planet and all around. And that's really where it clicked for me, was to see, when things are done right, how much better it is, and how much more proud it makes you. You're like, hey, I'm part of a solution, not just part of another me too.
Yeah. So basically, you explained beautifully what you learned in the plant-based and organic sectors. How did you try to implement that within beef, but in different way?
Yeah. What I'd say is I tend to be a pretty risk-adverse guy in general. So one of the things for me is, because of my risk aversion, I've not been one that really starts businesses. I'm one that finds businesses that can be passionate about. And so when I finished my time with the organic company, the only reason I left was because we ended up selling the company, and it required a relocation. And I was like, I don't want to move. So I came out of that, worked in an ice cream company for a couple of years. I was like, this is not quite for me. And then I worked for a plant-based company that was focused around jackfruit, so not the super highly processed stuff, but it was still just overly processed. I was like, that's not quite for me either. And, I found this company, Grass-Fed Foods, and I was like, okay, that is something that fits me culturally. And, one of the biggest things for me is finding something that truly inspires you. And I'd give that advice to anybody in the world. Like, I chose in a few different instances to pursue title or pursue wealth. And if you're not in something that you truly believe in and that inspires you, it's a pretty empty career.
Yeah.
And once you find something that you're like, I can make a difference, I can make an impact, and I'm truly inspired, it's just like the lights go off and you're like, okay, now let's make an impact. So in some senses, I like to say, I didn't find food. It seems to have found me. There was many times I was like, let me go try to do something else. But it just kept sucking me back in. And in this role, particular in this company, I don't think I've ever been happier because I know I can make an impact. And I've been here in the food industry and in beef for so long. I know kind of where a lot of the things hide in the shadows, and I'm able to pull it out.
Yeah. For our listeners, let's talk about regenerative. Can you, Kevin, personally define regenerative ranching?
I think it's still open for some definition, but, for us, it is, I'll relate it to, people that go camping. There's this saying that says, leave no trace behind. So you go into the mountains, you go into the forest, and you can go enjoy it. And if you come out and it looks like you weren't ever there, then you kind of did your job. What if you took it one step further and you said, what if I don't leave a trace? Or what if I make it better than it was when I got there? So maybe you go camping and you go on hikes, and as you walk around, you pick up trash. You're making it better. And so regenerative to me is, how can you make the planet better? And one of the nice things about beef and ruminant animals is, when done properly, they actually sequester carbon and help bring topsoil back down to the earth. So as you think about global warming and climate change, everybody's very concerned about the carbon. What's the carbon up in the atmosphere? Well, in general, unless we're launching things into space or things coming down, everything on the planet has always been here. It's just recycles. So for all the carbon to be creating climate change and those kinds of things, it had to have come from somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's from us burning fossil fuels, cutting down trees, those kinds of things. So, all those were down in the ground, and now they're up in the atmosphere. So to bring the carbon levels back down, you have to take it out of the atmosphere and put it back down into the ground.
Right.
You can do that. The primary way of doing that is photosynthesis. So utilizing plant life to bring the carbon back and put it in. And with grass-fed cattle, if you do it right through what you call intensive rotational grazing, so you let the grass grow really tall, open it up, let the cattle go in there, eat it intensively for a couple days, but not get too low or barren ground. Let them drop their waste along, naturally fertilize, create fungi, those kinds of things. It helps that growing process. And with a number of our partner ranches, I was on one earlier this year. When they took over the ranch, they had about half an inch of nutrient-rich carbon topsoil. They've been at this for about 10 years. They're a fully organic, regenerative farm, and they're up to 9 inches in 10 years. So that is a ton of carbon, and the land is just beautiful and lush. And so to me, that's regenerative farming, is being able to do the right practices to bring the carbon back down into the soil and help get it out of the atmosphere. And when done right, I think it's really, really a beautiful thing to see how happy the animals are, how happy the land is. And like I said, we've also tested the meat and the different vitamins and minerals coming off those animals are way higher than conventional beef.
Yeah. No, thanks for the explanation. Looks like it's more than, when we talk about regenerative farming or ranching, it's more than organic or grass-fed.
Correct. It's a whole system. And I think, I was in organic for a long time, and I think organic can be great. I think organic is one aspect of regenerative, but, there's a lot of people that, you can do organic, but still monocrop. That's not going to regenerate the land. So you have to have good, healthy crop rotations. You still need to not till the soil. You still need to not pour different additives into the soil. So like you can do organic and still use, organic compounds that help, keep the weeds down and those kinds of things. So I'm a strong believer in organic. Like whenever given the choice, like between organic and conventional, I'll always choose organic over conventional. And grass-fed's the same thing. Like grass-fed is a very loosely, so actually I'll rewind just a second. So organic is not a loosely defined term. So there's some misconception out there that a lot of people think of
Can you explain some of the misconceptions?
Yeah. So, in the terms of greenwashing, one of the biggest terms that you should look out for is the term natural. Like there is no food definition of natural. So pretty much anybody can slap natural on the package and say that they did one or two things different, but there is no definition.
Yeah.
And I think there was so much greenwashing done with the term natural that people lost faith a little bit. And organic, while it's not perfect, it is strictly defined. So the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, has very strict guidelines on what is organic. And that, I can say I could talk about produce and I can talk about beef because those are my two experiences. But, like in produce, for something to be certified organic, it has to be grown on land that you prove you did not apply any synthetic pesticides or herbicides or synthetic compounds to the land for 3 years. So if you put on Roundup, before you could ever call anything organic coming off that land, it has to rest for 3 years. And rest means you just don't call it organic. You can grow other things on it, but you just can't call it organic. So it's very strict, and it's hard for a lot of people to make that transition because go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Kevin. Just for the listeners, when you say you have to hold for 3 years to give time, just to simplify it, for the soil to heal?
So you have for 3 years to give time for the synthetic compounds to essentially dissipate from the soil. So that 3-year window is what they call a transition period.
Transition, yeah.
Yep. So you have that 3-year transition period. And then after that, you can start calling things organic coming off that land. But you have to prove it.
Yeah.
And in the case of beef, you pretty much just have to make sure that the animal is grazing on certified organic land. So you could have a nice grass-fed animal, but if it's on transition land, it's not going to be considered certified organic. So it always has to eat organic food. It always has to, never be treated with any synthetic compounds, those kinds of things. I think, there are some really, really great products out there that are not fully organic, but that check the boxes.
Yeah. And from a practical standpoint, let's say, you want to do or take all the steps to make sure that the soil is clean at some point. Do you need to replace a layer of soil, or do you just leave it for 3 years and then all the synthetic chemical stuff will disappear? Or?
It depends, I'd say. I think what I've seen, and I am by far not the expert in this, but to really have the land be healthy, purely letting it set is probably not the best thing for it. You need to kind of hit a reset button a little bit. So, some of the good regenerative farmers that I've seen, when they decide to make a transition, they'll clean it up, do what that one final disc, which a disc is to tear up the land, kind of fold the soil, and they'll help sow in like fungi. So, fungus that goes down into the soil that helps regenerate it. And then they'll plant a blend of native grasses and legumes and those kinds of things that help that soil grow back. And so like, a legume, which is beans, like alfalfas, there's all types of different kinds of plants that are legumes. They actually create nitrogen.
Yeah.
So versus adding additive nitrogen, they're bringing nitrogen back into the ground based on what they are. And then by having some of the fungi down there, that's creating that micro activity down in the soil and helps it to grow. I think if you were to take land that's been monocropped for 20 years with synthetic, lots of synthetic chemicals, and you just let it sit, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be barren still after 3 years because you've almost killed it.
Yeah.
So you have to take steps to bring some of that life back into it. I think step one is getting those grasses going. And then step two that we saw is bringing ruminant animals that just come and help maintain that naturally. Like they're dropping their fertilizer. They're keeping the grasses at an optimal level. Like, if you let the grass grow and nothing ever takes it down, then it'll just stop its growth cycle and just sit there. You want it to grow, bring it back down naturally, and then let it start growing again.
Yeah. Right. Fascinating. Can you share the story of the ranch you visited in Australia with 9 inches of recovered topsoil?
Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful ranch. So that was for one program that we're working on. That's a certified organic, certified regenerative program. So that's kind of the top of the top. And the ranches in Australia are just so vast in comparison to things here. Like there's just, I think that was a 20,000 acre ranch, which in some Australian terms is small. And you go out there and in certain places, like the grasses are as tall as me.
Wow.
And what they can do there, and like I'd say Australia is definitely more advanced when it comes to regenerative farming. And it's partially, I'd say 2 to 3 things. Number one, the climate is more optimum to grow year round. Like most of the US, the climate's pretty tough. So I don't put down any American farmer for the way that they're doing things, because even on our ranch, like the winters are brutal.
Yeah,
and Australia does not get that. So climate is a major thing. The other thing is just the incentives. So in Australia, there's a lot of government incentives for regenerative carbon credits, those kinds of things. And in the US, currently the incentives are more around commodities. Like, there is lots of incentives to grow corn and soybeans and monocrop because that's the system in place. So, I don't put down any American rancher because I think, it's a tough life. And I know from knowing hundreds of farmers and ranchers, there's a reason that most family farms eventually get out of the business, and it's because you eventually go broke given the current system. But going back to the Australian ranch, so they took some pretty barren land, started raising cattle, and they got on a government program that said, hey, we want you to, we're going to come out twice a year, measure your topsoil, take soil samples, do all this. And, depending on what you do, you can get carbon credits. And so they really were trying to do it to help supplement their income through carbon credits. And they just went all the way. They're like, well, if we're going to do this, like, let's go all in. Let's do regenerative. Let's do organic. Let's go all the way in. And they tried to learn everything they could. And over those 10 years, like I said, they went from half an inch of topsoil to 9 inches of topsoil. And as we were sitting there having a cup of coffee, and I was like, well, did it work? Like, how were the carbon credits? And the guy laughs and he's like, well, I've made more in carbon credits in the last 10 years than I have on the beef. But the beef's where my love and my passion lies. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing to see what we've been able to do with this land. But the incentives were there.
Yeah, yeah. Let's shift gear and talk about some climate narratives. We hear that cows are climate enemies because of methane. Is that the full story, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm no scientist, but what I will say from the things that I do know, so cows have 3 stomachs. So they go through a digestive process where they consume, then they burp it up, then it goes to the second stomach, then they kind of burp it up, and it goes to the third stomach. So with that, a lot of people thought it was the cow farts. It's not the farts. It's the burping was what some of it is. What we have seen is that in grass-fed cattle, the methane is much, much, much less than in corn-fed cattle. And it's because the animals are eating what they're meant to be eating. That is native diets. And so, let's just even compare it to the human body. So when we eat something that we're not supposed to be eating, like for me, it's dairy. If I eat a lot of dairy, like my stomach is not a happy thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to release more gases than I would if I eat fruits and vegetables and meats and things that my body is happy. And so what we've seen is it's the same thing with cows, that a lot of the high methane is coming from cows in feedlots, and because they're essentially eating candy, right? The corn and the super calorie dense feed that they eat is not natural for them. So their stomachs, they're just constantly processing. Plus, you're feeding them at a rate that's much higher than they normally would eat. So as you think about what's going on inside the feedlot, the goal there, and it's been a while since I've talked to a feedlot expert, but on average, like in the US, I think the goal is you want them to gain about 3.5 pounds a day in the feedlot. And so you feed them basically the equivalent of candy to put on that gain.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of methane, and all their waste, all their droppings are going towards barren feedlot ground, not dropping into the native pastures where there's lots of insect life and fungi life that's eating that up and soaking it down into the soil.
Yeah.
So it's just a different system.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your response to high-profile figures like Bill Gates who advocate reducing or eliminating meat?
I always go back to incentives, right? So what are the incentives? And I don't know Bill Gates, but I do know he had a lot of investments in plant-based and cell-based alternatives. So he has the money to market and share his narrative, but I probably believe that his narrative and what he's pushing is so that the companies he's supporting and invested in would explode and he makes more wealth. I think it all for somebody like that, it comes back to wealth. I do know that Bill Gates is now, I think he's like the largest holder of agricultural land in the entire United States.
Right.
He's buying up mass chunks of land. I don't know. I'll be honest, I'm not super connected to everything he's doing, but I don't know if he's doing positive things with that land or negative things.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about that, for the past 1 decade or maybe more, these methane emissions from cows, it started to take traction within the media. And we still keep hearing about it, that in order to reduce the cows' methane emissions, we need to reduce our meat intake, And in the same time, 5 years ago, we started to hear that some companies, mainly dairy companies, and here in Scandinavia, in Europe, using Bovaer. I'm not sure, Kevin, if you heard about the Bovaer injections. So they inject cows with Bovaer or similar additives that claim to cut emissions by at least 30%, you know. And we know, and it's public information, we know that Bill Gates is heavily involved in, from an investment standpoint, heavily involved in Bovaer. But what we don't know is, okay, cutting emissions, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, you know. But what we don't know is the long-term effect on meat and milk quality.
Correct. Call me old school, but I'm not a fan of using technology to inject things with things that you don't know all the implications. And, I'm a fan of being smarter about things, but I think as humans, we tend to think of technology as a fix-all sometimes. We think that it can, if we do this, then it fixes that. And we're not advanced enough to know all the long-term implications of things. You still get the debates of, are eggs good for you? Are eggs bad for you? Like, we don't know a lot of things. And so by injecting animals with a synthetic compound that does one thing, like what's happening?
Which is a chemical.
Yeah.
At the end of the
it's a chemical. It's synthetic
pure
chemical.
Yeah.
Pure chemical. Like, how's it affecting their reproductive system? How's it affecting the quality of the meat, the quality of the milk, the quality of the animal? Like, how does that animal feel? So I'm not a fan of things like that. One thing I have seen that's like similar to that I think is pretty interesting is there's some people out there that are creating like a pellet out of seaweed that washes up, and the seaweed acts as like almost like a natural stomach calming thing. And so they help, they'll take like these pellets and in the grass-fed pens, or the not the pens, like the pastures. So you typically put the animals in like, call it 10 acres at a time, leave them for a week, move them on, and they'll move around and put an additive that allows the animals to go eat the seaweed compound. And it supposedly is reducing the methane by 30 to 50% as well.
Okay.
I'm much more of a fan of an animal eating something that it seems attractive to it than an injection. So
yeah.
I like smart solutions in general. Like, that's part of the reason I always tend to try to choose organic, because an animal injected with that would not be considered organic. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of my thought process on it. Like I said, I'm a simple man.
Yeah, me too. When basically you read or you hear all these kind of breakthroughs, for me, it's not true innovation. It's just chemical masking, like you were explaining earlier about soil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's chemical masking. It's something that you can utilize to make you feel good. But if you don't know what it's truly doing, it could be more harmful than good.
Yeah. Let's start with the usage of synthetic pesticides since post World War II, where we know by default that Germany invested heavily into pesticides to feed basically their armies, And post World War II, we've been using those pesticides for quick fix, to basically shorten the process for the best gain, And for the sake of scaling, and God knows how the farming industry, for a farmer, it's hard work. Like you explained, you've been raised on a ranch, and it's hard work. You wake up early, and it's a non-stop work, And most of the time, sometimes you sacrifice weekends, holidays, or being with your friends. It's a hard work. But then when you have all these big companies, food companies investing, acquiring lands, farmlands, and investing heavily, and they want to basically see a return of their investment.
Correct.
And it's straightforward. It's quite clear to everyone, without complicating the issue, that using chemical synthetic products is the way to go. Either spoiling the soil or injecting those stuff into the animals.
Yeah, as you said, the return on investment, I think that's kind of where my head goes, is, again, you come back to the incentives. And these companies are always looking for a return on investment. And the farmers, they have to have a return on investment. Like when we've talked to, even my family that operates the ranch on a day-to-day basis of doing regenerative, they're like, that transition period, we go broke. So
Yeah.
pretty tough. One of the biggest problems today, and it's really come up post-World War II, is we thought of ourselves as industrialists, and then, very, very much on like the investment front, is when we think about our returns, we think pretty short-sighted. So, whenever you talk about returns, most people are talking like around 7 years. Like, hey, if I can't double my money in 7 years, like, is it worth it? Or, that 7 to 10 year time frame. Then you look and say, well, how long has the planet been around? Billions and billions of years. How long have people been around? Hundreds of thousands of years. So, okay, if we were to think about doing, creating true long-term return, you probably need to look out a lot further than 7 to 10 years. And I think that's the problem. So you use the pesticides, you use the herbicides because you need and want a return now. So can I take a crop that's, producing $7,000 an acre today, and with the right chemicals, make it produce $10,000 an acre tomorrow? Sure. You do that for 10 years plus, and you degrade the soil, you degrade the land. Are you back to $7,000 plus all the expenses of pouring on the chemicals? Yeah. You go another 10 years. That land's probably producing $3,000, and you're using double the chemicals. Fast forward another 10 years. It's producing maybe $1,500, and you're spending even more money, and you realize that land is depleted. Had you gone back and said, I'm content with my $7,000, and maybe for the next couple of years, I'll take $6,000, but then you don't have to spend the money on the chemicals, and it stays healthy, and the soil maintains, will it produce $7,000 for the next 30 years, and you don't have to spend anything?
Yeah.
I think we're just looking at the wrong time horizons.
Yeah. Let's talk about the cost, the meat cost. And before I start, you explain the regenerative farming in Australia and how impressed you were while visiting Australia. My experience while traveling, because I love meat. I'm a meat lover, and I cannot hide it.
Me too.
And I will not hide it, for whatever reason. And we eat meat, basically, not only beef, but fish, poultry. When it's hunting season, of course, we love that as well.
Yeah.
But while traveling, one thing I do all the time is to go to a butcher or supermarket and see the variety of meat, the quality and things. And I can tell you, Kevin, even here in Sweden, a couple of years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, we had Costco that opened in Stockholm. And I must say, the beef quality is really good. But then you have the local one, the Swedish meat. You have grass-fed meat. You have the American one, And the one imported from United States, slightly expensive. I tried it, good quality, I must say, versus the grass-fed local meat from Sweden. Not sure if it's to do with the brand, to do with the flag, the American flag. And talking about cost, Kevin, for our listeners, why does grass-fed, regeneratively raised beef cost more?
Simply put, it costs more because of time. So time is money. And when you raise a grass-fed, regeneratively raised animal, it takes a lot longer for that animal to come up to a proper weight that's ready for it to go to butcher. So, in the typical feedlot, you're going to have an animal that's somewhere between 2 to 2.5 years old by the time it gets processed. And you can send a grass-fed animal at that same time window, and if there's, the right nutrients and those kinds of things, it can get there. But it's walking a lot more. It's roaming around, so it's getting more exercise. It's not eating such a calorie-dense diet, so it can't put on that weight near as fast. And it takes a ton of work. So like regeneratively raised, we talk about the intensive grazing, which means you put them in, call it 10 acres that's really growing, let them just eat for a week or two, and then you move them. And so like on that, the regenerative ranch in Australia, even though they had 20,000 acres, like most of it sits and rests for 70 to 90 days between grazings. So if you think like, all right, every week or two, I got to go move them. I have to have, this 20,000 acres split off into, I think they said they had, it's like 120 different paddocks or lots. And so you got to go out, you're constantly checking on them, moving them, versus in the feedlot, they stand in one place twice a day. Truck comes and just dumps feed down in some troughs.
And on that, Kevin, just for the listeners, now moving them, you need the manpower, it's time, it's not a small feat.
And it's the fences. Think how, if you have 120 little lots all sectioned off, that's a lot of work to make sure the fences are there, like that they're properly maintained, that every one of those 120 have the right water source. Like it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, yeah. And logistic as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a completely different system. I think that is part of it. Just the cost of the feed. Land is very, very expensive around the globe. So if you just think about if you can have this land do something other than maintain cattle, you probably would get a higher return. So you're building in the cost of the land, cost of maintaining the land, versus again, one big chunk that's holding thousands and thousands of heads in a feedlot. So I think that there are some misconceptions around, well, it doesn't cost you anything to let them eat grasses. It's like, no, it costs the time, the money of the grasses themselves, the land costs. And yes, do I have to go buy these grasses externally, like corn? No.
Yeah.
But could I be doing something else on that land that gets me a return immediately? Probably.
Yeah. And what's your strategy at Teton to make it accessible without compromising quality?
Yeah, so our strategy really is, it's about convenience. So when Teton first came up as a company, we were really focused on the steaks and the high-end cuts of beef. And when you look at the premiums you need on a steak and those kinds of things, there's not a lot of consumers that are willing to pay the high premium for that. And for the longest time, like people did, at least the US consumer did not like grass-fed because they're like, well, it's gamey, it tastes different. I think, what I have found over my years, and I've always eaten grass-fed, like growing up, we ate a cow off the land, those kinds of things, and I enjoy it. And, some people say it's gamey, and what that is it's nutrients. So when you eat a conventional animal, like to me personally, like it doesn't have a lot of flavor. Like it's protein and it's fat, but when you eat, you're like, yeah, it's kind of boring. And that gaminess or that, stronger flavor, that's nutrients, that's carotenes, that's variety of diet that you're eating. Yeah. Some people don't like that. And so with Teton, what we've done is, try to help introduce people to grass-fed in a super easy, convenient way. And now that that's really taken off, like we're exploring more into the ground beefs, the steaks again, those kinds of things. But we wanted that entry point. So our products are primarily hot dogs and sausages. So seasonings, those kinds of things. That allows us to utilize animals that have lived a full life, not necessarily being butchered just for the steak quality, like a younger animal, but allowing animals that have lived full, healthy lives, but may not be the greatest for steak. They can go into hot dogs, burgers, sausages, those kinds of things, creating delicious products that give you the nutritional benefits. They are processed, but our goal is to have the minimal amount of ingredients and natural ingredients as possible. So, and every day I challenge the team to take even more ingredients out of the current products. Like, how can we make it even more natural? How can we reduce the sodium levels even more?
Yeah.
So that's really been our strategy, is give everybody an entry point, allow grass-fed to become more mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it is really starting to catch on with the American consumer, we're looking at more of those like traditional whole muscle cuts and ground beefs and those kinds of things. But for the longest time, just given flavors and the thought, it was tough business for a long time. And
Yeah.
so getting people that entry point as affordably as possible has kind of been one of the main strategies.
Yeah. Yeah. Why you haven't labeled Teton's products regenerative?
Yeah. So in the spirit of greenwashing,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call all of our products regenerative because
You concerned that you might mislead the consumers, or?
I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say there's two things. So number one, because of how many animals we buy and those kinds of things, we can't prove with absolute certainty that every single one is coming off a regenerative land. And to prove it, you'd have to have soil samples and those kinds of things. When you work with thousands of farmers around the world, a lot of them aren't going to do that. So I don't want to put anything on the label that I don't feel 110% confidence that every single ounce meets that criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So we are coming out with like a certified regenerative line. It's organic and certified regenerative, where we have third-party auditors go out there doing soil samples, testing the land, proving that. But without proving it, I don't want to create the perception that every single pound checks that box. I do believe that it's all regenerative. Like doing grass-fed the way that we define it for us, like we make sure every rancher is like their animals are never confined. They're always treated humanely, that they are doing intensive grazing and rotations when they can. In some regions, like you have to supplement with hay, or you have to bring them in like extreme weather and those kinds of things. But I don't know, if they've been able to prove what's going on with the land, and they don't have the resources for it. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is that at least today, most consumers don't understand regenerative. So I was at a conference a couple months ago for basically meat producers, and they asked a number of consumers, like I think they did like video interviews of, call it 30 consumers. They asked them tons of questions, but one of them was like, do you support regenerative beef? And every single answer was negative because nobody understood it. They're like, what does that mean? Does it mean that like you can cut off a leg and it grows it back? Or, you think of like regenerating animal parts, and out of all 30, like every single one, they misunderstood it.
Yeah.
So what we've
Because
been
of lack of awareness, lack of...
Yeah, I think it's just lack of awareness.
Or we made it complicated to grasp, to understand.
I think it's super early stages is what it is. I think we're in really, really early stages. And, when people don't know, like they're taking the word regenerative, which means to regenerate, and they're taking it quite literally, like you're regenerating parts on an animal, which is not the case at all.
Yeah, it's not.
So what we've tried to do is on our labeling, we talk about land stewardship and how we try to improve the health of the planet, but we've been very conscious not to use the words regenerative yet. Mm-hmm. A, just because of the consumer perception, like if it could be taken negative. And B, I don't want to call out the words regenerative because I don't want to give the perception that I'm claiming it's certified regenerative when I'm not there yet. Yeah. Am I working there? Yes.
Yeah.
But my number one value as an individual and the thing I've pushed through with the company is truth. And if I don't feel like something labeling and the perception is 100% truthful, I don't want to do it.
Yeah. No, it's clear. You don't want to mislead the consumer, but in the same time, you want to explain the entire process, your strategy, And you told me earlier, Kevin, from a leadership standpoint, you are not there to lead with a title, but you lead based on purpose, based on impact. And on that, how do you lead with integrity in an industry full of marketing spin? Must be
Yeah, it's
overwhelming.
frustrating.
Yeah.
I would say it's frustrating. So the best thing I've done for our company, honestly, is we sat down as a team and we really clearly defined mission and values as a company.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a very much a values driven guy, as I've said before. Like maybe it was just whipped into me as a young kid on the farm, but like having strong values means everything to me. And so when I set with the team the mission and values, we set them so it's absolutely clear what we stand for. And we had a couple of weeks ago somebody new come to the team and they're like, hey, did you know we could save quite a bit of money if we started adding this starch to our products? And I was like, I don't care. Like, is the beef industry super challenging right now and costs are extremely high and we're not making much? Yes. Am I going to forego on my values and add things that I'm not proud of on the label just to make more money? No, that's not what I stand for.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being super values driven has been good. I mean, it's challenging because we obviously don't make as much money as many other companies. We don't claim things that we don't feel like are fully legitimate yet, like the regenerative thing. Like I could throw the regenerative on the package, but I'm choosing not to because I don't believe deep in my heart that we are there yet. Are we working there and we're pushing the ranchers in the right direction and we're trying to help everybody get to the right place? Yes. But I'm not going to fill the consumers full of fluff that we're already there. And that's where I get frustrated is in the industry. I mean, it's definitely a pretty cutthroat industry where there's a lot of people claiming different things and they'll consistently beat you on price because they're cutting corners. The one that's the most frustrating to me is one of the largest grass-fed programs in the US is they're feeding grass pellets to the cattle in feedlots. So is it grass-fed? And by definition, is grass-fed not eating grains and cereals? Yes, it is grass-fed. Is it eating a diverse diet? No. Is it moving and roaming naturally and improving the land? No. In my mind, is it grass-fed? No, It's not. It's a conventional animal eating a grass compound. And so I do get frustrated because like we'll go in and work on trying to win accounts and win consumers. And they're like, well, you're expensive. You're just like, well, sometimes that's the cost of doing things the right way. And we don't win a lot of business, but I do know we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And the benefits are beyond. But Kevin, you're the CEO of Teton Waters Ranch. What red lines do you refuse to cross?
Refuse to cross. So if it breaks my values, I refuse to cross it. Mm-hmm. I will not lie. Like, I think that one was beat into me as a child. And if it damages human health, if it damages the quality of the life of the animal, and if it consciously is damaging the planet, we're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, like, we work hard, but I sleep like a baby every night because my conscience is clean.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've always kind of lived by is like, don't ever do something that if it makes it on the front page of a newspaper, you're not proud of it being on there. So that's kind of one of the guiding compasses. And so as we think about lines that we won't cross, like I won't add unnecessary additives or ingredients into our products for costs. I will not accept an animal that has been confined for a high majority of its life. Like that's not okay. I will always try to push to take more and more ingredients out to improve the quality of that product and improve the health benefits of that product. And so I'm not giving you specifics of the lines I won't cross, but I will say the values drive a lot of it.
Yeah, clear. Earlier, I said I'm a meat lover, and the reason is because of my industry. I've been in the sports industry as an athlete, as an Olympic coach, you name it. And I can tell you, based on my experience, when it comes to performance and top protein quality, when it comes to protein, there is nothing can beat best good quality meat. No supplements, no protein powders. In your opinion, Kevin, what does today's athlete or health conscious consumer get wrong about protein?
Yeah, I think the number one misconception is that all proteins treated equally. And so,
Right.
People are saying, like, right now we're on a massive protein kick as consumers. Like, protein has never been stronger, which that's where it belongs. Like, you need a lot of protein to have a good lean muscle mass, to have a good nutritious body. We've been duped as consumers for a long time, thinking that like the number one tier in your diet needs to be grains and those kinds of things. So I think we're in the right direction on like you do need good healthy proteins. But the number one misconception is that all proteins are created equal. Like, I'll tell you, you eat a super processed protein powder, they're honing that down to one elemental compound and then maybe blending in vitamins and nutrients. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that for your body to absorb the right nutrients, it has to be with the right carriers. And so, when you're eating like a high quality grass-fed beef, that animal has eaten millions of plants and consumed enormous amounts of vitamins and nutrients. That all of that is going into that food. There's also the healthy fats. So you have a lot of like in grass-fed, it's very high in omega-3s and lower in the omega-6s. And when you consume protein with other things that are very natural for the human diet, then your body performs. And again, coming back to simplicity, we as humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and our bodies are programmed from that hundreds of thousands of years to extract the best nutritional value to carry you forward based on the natural diets that they ate. Even, go back 100 years. Like, was there highly processed foods? No. So your body can absorb things like berries and nuts and meats because that's what it's been, evolutionarily trained to do. And when you start getting, monocropped nutrients like whey proteins that are super, super refined down to the elemental level, it's not having the carriers. Yeah. Are you getting the protein? Yeah. Is a good chunk of it probably just flushing through you because it's not attaching? Yeah. So I think that's the biggest misconception to me is that, we try to bring in protein, but a lot of it's brought in through additives and those kinds of things. And I think a lot of it flushes through. It's kind of funny too. Like, I've been trying to, I did something where I was trying to lose a couple pounds and it was saying, I needed, I don't remember, it's like 230 grams of protein a day. And you're like, man, without protein shakes or something like that, like there's no way you're getting there. So I think you got to take it a little bit with a grain of salt. But
yeah. You spoke earlier about your experience in Australia and even here in Europe. I must say there is a lot of support, incentive from local governments or from the European Union to help farmers. You've spoken quite lengthily about the challenges, the issues within your country. With the new administration, there is this slogan, "Make America Great Again." Do you foresee or see the administration pushing more towards regulations or policies to incentivize more ranchers and farmers in the U.S.? Or is it just a talk?
It's a tough question. I don't know the answer because I always take anything that a politician says at about a 10% rate. like what they say and what they do never seem to quite align. One thing I do find positive is I read, I don't know, this was a couple weeks ago, that the administration is pushing to remove, and they called out Chinese investment particularly.
Yeah, acquiring properties and land.
Correct.
Yeah.
Buying and acquiring agricultural land.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a right move for the American consumer.
Right.
Like not having particularly like extreme industrial wealth from other countries taking over your farmland, that's very, very important. So I liked that move. That's the only move that I'd say so far has given me a lot of hope. But I think consumers, those are the ones that are able to help make a change. Mm-hmm. And one thing, as I kind of reflect on where are we going long term as human beings, I think over the last 100 years, we've moved a lot of people into administrative type roles, office type roles. And a lot of people are feeling depressed, down, unconnected. And as you look towards, the boom of artificial intelligence and how a lot of these administrative roles, over time might be reduced or even eliminated, mm-hmm. people, if they were getting a lot of purpose from their work, and if that goes away, like you could see even more depression, even more sadness coming about. I think over the long term, and you're starting to see this a little bit, where a lot of people want to return back to land and say, mm-hmm. I want to do more gardening. I want to have 5 acres. Maybe I have a cow. Maybe I do these kinds of things. Reconnect with the planet, be outside, those kinds of things. And I think if the administration can help make an impact, it'd be taking some of these lands that have been monocropped for years and years and years and start trying to help give those back to families that can't afford to buy the lands today, that might actually be incentivized to do the right thing and reconnect themselves to nature, reconnect themselves to the food chain.
Yeah.
That'd be a pretty interesting move to me.
Yeah. But then you have another reality, which is sad, because you have all this lobbying from the food industry towards the processed and ultra-processed food, resulting in every year higher percentage of chronic diseases, especially with the little ones, with the youngsters. When you compare the 70s, even the 80s, comparing to the 90s and 2000, the percentage of obesity, not only in the US, worldwide, especially here in Europe, is just crazy, And when the farmers are not supported or incentivized by the local governments, just a kind of a support, it makes it harder for farmers to keep their lands, mm-hmm. to try to do their best to basically produce good quality vegetables, fruits, meat for the consumers, for the community. And on the other hand, when you have the food industry trying for the sake of ROI and for the sake of quick fix and scalability, and on the other hand, you have the pharma industry, it's just crazy. I spoke about this issue with a couple of guests about it's great that the new U.S. administration, the existing U.S. administration, having as a slogan, make America healthy again. But if you don't try to tackle this issue from its roots, I don't see how do you go forward. Beside of, you spoke about the regulatory, that there is quite tough regulations and controls when it comes to organic sourcing, organic food, organic product, regenerative farming, regenerative ranching. We have the same here in Scandinavia, within the European Union. There is quite a tough regulations, but we are not out there yet, because at the end of the day, for a consumer, when they go to a supermarket, grocery store, and they see the prices, and there is a big price difference between what it's called healthy product versus a no healthy, they look at their wallet. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And when you look at the entire chain, it's not easy. There is no silver bullet. Yeah.
No, I think that you hit the nail right on the head. It's where the incentives lying.
Yeah.
And to me, one of the biggest issues with politics is greed. So the lobbyists get through, they help push things that help their company, and it's not good for the long-term sustainability of anybody except for the one. And one of the things that's been somewhat frustrating to me is that, like, similar to what you say, you go to the grocery store and the healthy alternatives, they're quite expensive in comparison to the other alternatives. And I mean, I even do that sometimes. I'll be like, whew, this is expensive. And it's because the incentives are in the wrong place, right? Like you're giving subsidies for corn, for soybeans, for sugars, for all these things, because that's where the lobbyists have been able to push it. You're not pushing, and a lot of the corporate farming agencies or corporate farming companies, like they go into the crops where the incentives are. Like the model's built around getting governmental incentives and those kinds of things, and it's not pushing us in the right direction. And where I get a little bit frustrated is you look over the last, and I don't know the exact number, but over the last 10 years, food inflation in general has been fairly low. It's 4 or 5% per year, but healthcare is just huge. It's hundreds of percent
It's massive,
a year.
right? Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
So, one thing that I've talked to people about is like, don't you think that maybe the reason that you're paying so much more for healthcare insurance, and that when you go to the hospital, it costs so much, and that everybody is on some sort of prescription, is that you're not putting the right things in to begin with?
Yeah.
And if you were to feed your body the right way with very nutritious food, without chemicals, without additives, without colors, would your healthcare bill be a fraction? So you may not be paying for it at the front end. Like, oh yeah, I don't want to pay for good, healthy, organic produce and grass-fed beefs and those kinds of things. But later in life, are you paying for it laying in the hospital bed?
Yeah.
I think so. And I think it's more expensive.
Kevin, what's your vision for Teton Waters Ranch for the next 5 years?
My vision is to keep pushing forward and make a power for good. Be that voice of truth in the industry that when people look, they're like, I could trust this brand. And if they see something that they think's not legitimate, they let us know. And if it isn't, we'll fix it. Like, we're definitely not perfect. But be that voice for truth. Be a power to help introduce people to grass-fed beef, to help people start their journey for the right proteins, treating the animal the right way, helping ranchers start doing more regenerative agriculture. So, one thing that we've done this year is we've come out with a new standard that all of our partners now have to sign. And it first says, I verify that I am treating my animals humanely. So treating them with absolute care, monitoring them, never abusing them, all the right things that you should do for the animal. But what we added in this year is that I am taking steps towards being regenerative. So whenever possible, I will do crop rotations. I will not take down deforestation or not change the land in meaningful ways for profits. So they're not musts, but I'm saying that I'm moving in the right direction. And a lot of the ranchers have been very positive about that. They're like, hey, thank you for recognizing this. So we're trying to push more and more ranchers towards regenerative.
Yeah.
My vision is probably in the next couple of years, once we can verify, we'll start calling out regenerative in a more meaningful manner. And then just keep trying to be a power for good for both consumers, for the planet, for the farmers, and for the animals.
Yeah. Do you think regenerative can scale and still stay true to its principles?
I do long term. I think the transition for some people would be really hard. So it's either going to stay kind of a small niche thing because like the ones that have been able to get there, they've made that transition. Now they're making money, they're seeing the benefits, and it's working. But for the ranchers that are living paycheck to paycheck, but there's a lot, I don't know if they'll have the ability to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that'll be the tough thing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason we haven't made it required, because I don't want to put any ranchers out either.
Yeah. Now it's time for our lightning round.
All right.
Good. What's a book that shaped how you lead?
One that comes to mind is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Like, that's kind of been a big one for me, is just seeing different leaders over the space and seeing when ego takes over, how it's never going to impact, and always being conscious of how you show up and who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your go-to meal after a long day?
Go-to meal after a long day.
Or let's say your favorite dish.
I'll go favorite dish, because go-to meals, typically I'm so tired. Like, if it's a super long day, I'll just choose not to eat and just go to bed. Like, I'm just too tired.
Yeah.
Favorite dish, if I have the time, I love to smoke a brisket.
Okay.
So make a brisket out on the deck. And my daughters absolutely love it.
And is it a seasonal dish, or it's occasion, or?
I'd say it's occasion.
Sorry to cut you, because one thing that we don't talk quite a lot, I think, or we lost touch completely. We lost touch with seasoned dishes, seasoned food, depends which part of the world we are. Here we are quite fortunate to have the 4 seasons,
Yep.
And each season has its beauty, has its food, has its, sorry.
No.
Yeah.
No, I agree with, we have lost touch, and that's due to
Absolutely.
globalization, right? Like, you can buy strawberries any time of the year. That's crazy to think, like, I can get fresh berries in the middle of December.
Yeah.
So you don't eat as seasonally as you should. So I do agree. But yeah, the favorite meal probably in the house for us is a homemade smoked brisket. But it's a cooking experience more than anything. Like, there's all the time my younger daughter will be like, "Dad, will you make us a brisket?" Like, it's like a 15-hour thing. So
And that's the secret, Kevin. They will never ever forget those moments.
Yeah.
Because of that dish. Yeah. It's social. It's fully agree with you. Yeah.
I think that's one thing that we've missed out a lot on, is like the sitting down and eating as a family, as an experience. Like, there's something truly, truly like ancestral about sharing a meal with people, with no devices, no distractions, those kinds of things. And so in our house, like, that's probably my favorite thing, is like we eat as a family, at least for dinner. We all sit there, no TV, no phones, no distractions.
Right.
And you just talk and connect.
Yeah. Yeah. One lesson you learned the hard way.
Let's see. One lesson that I tend to be a perfectionist, and you cannot be a perfectionist. I'll give you the example. Yeah, as I said, I'm a very risk-adverse guy. That's why I've never started my own businesses, even though I've had thousands and thousands and thousands of ideas. And we launched a product just this last year that we rely on financial models and those kinds of things. Like, and as I said, like, the beef industry is super challenged. So most of our products, we make razor thin margins.
Yeah.
And we launched this product, and consumers love it.
Okay.
And we went through the financial model, and it's like, yeah, we're going to make, like, it was razor thin, like 4% margin before even covering like people cost. But I wanted to bring it to the market. And now that people love it, and it's just blowing up, and we had one assumption slightly wrong, and it loses like 5%.
Oi.
And, I'm still going to support that item. We're trying to figure out what we can do to make it turn around. And as the beef market returns, like, we're kind of looking at like, okay, can you weather the storm? Right now, our beef prices are insane. And then once they come back, like, luckily our investment partners are fairly patient with us, but we'll turn it around. It's like every time I look at that product, I get so beat down on myself. It's like, I let this happen. I'm too much of a perfectionist and I shouldn't. So I take it very personally.
Yeah. One piece of advice you'd give your younger self.
I would say, and I give this to my children all the time, the number one trait to be successful in life is to have deep curiosity. And don't just accept things for face value. Don't just look at it and be like, okay. And when you ask the question why and somebody gives you because, be a pain and figure out why. And if you have true deep curiosity, you'll learn so much about the world around you that you're naturally going to have a competitive edge.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Kevin, what time do you usually wake up?
About 4:30, 4:45 each morning. I get up early, try to work out in the morning. So I don't live on the ranch today. My sister and her family live there. I'll go there multiple times a year and help out. So I don't still have to do the hard labor at 5 a.m. But I work out with my wife in our basement every morning, early in the morning. And that's, a ritual that is very good for me because we just talk, we work out. And by moving in the morning, I just seem to feel so much better. So I choose to wake up at that time. And sometimes it gets frustrating. Like the weekend comes and you're like, I want to sleep till 6. And it's like 5 a.m. and you're just dead awake.
Yeah. Are you more a spreadsheet or a shovel?
It depends. I'm a pretty flexible guy. I grew up on the ranch. Over the weekends, I really like hard physical labor. And you get that shovel or you get, building. I love building things. And it's just, even though you're sweating and your muscles hurt and you're exhausted, like there's something very meditative about that. But I also grew up, my background before becoming the CEO is I'm a finance person. And so I spent weeks and weeks and years deep in spreadsheets. And I do enjoy analyzing things and tearing them apart. And I think a lot of that just goes back to the curiosity things. I really want to get down to the root of things. And so I enjoy both, but they both come back to the same thing, that it's I'm solving a problem or I'm building a better future.
Yeah. Kevin, if you could host a barbecue with a historical figure, who will it be and why?
I'll get a little personal and say it would be with my dad, who passed away. It's pushing 17 years ago. So I'd want to introduce my dad to my family.
Kevin Pallaoro, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you. This was great, and I really appreciate your time.
And for our listeners, I leave you with a few words from Wendell Berry, a farmer, poet, and one of America's most honest voices on food and land. He once said, "People are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food." Let's change that. Choose real food, ask where it comes from, and demand systems that value soil, animals, and people. The decision we make to the grocery stores, to the table, and the field shape our health and our world. Choose intentionally. We want to thank you for joining our show. If you enjoyed this episode, we have more for you. You can now watch the entire episode on our YouTube and Spotify channels. While you're here, subscribe and don't forget to tap the bell. Visit prezerosportstalk.com to explore more conversations on sports, leadership, faith, performance, and innovation. From Sweden to the world. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and make a difference. We'll see you soon. Take care.